I have to confess, whenever I sit down and I use the immediate tie-off button, it's the button with the 1 stitch and then 3 stitches, I always have to remind myself what and how to use it. So first off, it's an instant locking stitch. So instead of touching the reverse button and having your machine back up and then go forward and have all those extra stitches, this immediate tie-off button is an instant lock. As soon as you touch it while you're sewing, it will lock on that stitch and all in the same hole for you. So let's do this a couple different ways. One with a straight stitch and then a couple times with a decorative stitch because it actually has 2 uses. So first off, let's just say we're sewing along and you're sewing and you push it. Watch the needle. Just immediately turns into about 4 stitches. There was a light that turned on right here while I'm doing it, and then it stopped for me. Like it, even with my foot still on the foot control, it locked and then quit sewing. So let's do that again. You activate it, it locks it in those couple stitches, and again, foot on the foot control, I lift it off, and I'm ready to like cut when I'm done. So anytime you want it just to do, and it looks good on the front, it'll have a little bit more knot-like style on the back because those stitches do pull to the back side, but they are secure. So right here where the last stitch was, not coming out at all. Now the other way that you can use it, let's do a decorative stitch that I want to maybe make sure I don't stop in the middle of the stitch. Let's do stitch number 41. So that's like that fun little star stitch. So let's say we start stitching. You can either step on your foot control or you can push the start stop button and let it just stitch without you doing anything. By the way, great way to stitch out your stitch book and get it done. But watch this. If you were just to pull this out right now, you're in the middle of a stitch. You don't want to stop there. You want it to stop at the end of the stitch. So if you touch the immediate tie-off button, light up that light, and you have to touch it while you're not sewing. Okay, so it'll still sew. Watch this. So it's sewing the rest of that row. But now, once this has been activated, when you touch the reverse button, while you're sewing, go ahead, it finishes the stitch it's on. The whole pattern locks and again stops. My foot is still on the foot control, so let's touch that little scissor button and see what we get. So this time, so it's kind of fun. So this was where I pulled it out to show you. This is where it picked up and finished that stitch. But when I was sewing, it finished the pattern, locked it, and stopped. So when that's why I had to confess at the beginning, I always have to remember, do I touch that while I'm sewing, when I'm not sewing, and then do I push this, when do I touch the reverse button? So even too, sometimes if I don't use this machine, often I have to kind of like peek at the manual or review this video, and it will help me remember how this button is intended to be used, since it has 2 fabulous ways it can be used. Let's do this one more time. We'll kind of put it all together. Let's do 79 is another fun version of this stitch. I'm going to put the light on. I'm going to hit start. Okay, but this one's a really heavy stitch. I probably don't have the right foot on, do I? Oh, that's okay. It'll still stitch out. It's a very heavy stitch. Nope, definitely need the right foot, but that's okay. Touch the reverse button one time and it will finish. There's those locking stitches and it ends because it knows when the stitch is going to be at its final stitch. Oh yes, definitely need the right foot. And let's look. I, for information, foot 2A would be the proper foot without the dual feed. So, but again, you can get it so it finishes the row of stitching. And I mentioned about the stitch book. I love to just sew each of those rows of stitches when I get near the end of my fabric, touch that reverse button, and it will finish that row, and it will look good.